Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning for our Sunday's meeting. And I'm going to start reading the passage of A Happy Life of Divaldo Franco by Joanna de Angelis. Don't vent your anger at those around you on account of your frustrations and complexities. They suffer enough already without having to deal with your load of bitterness and problems. Trade places with them, and you will see how much you will appreciate a little kindness and compassion to mitigate your humiliation and suffering. They are your needed brothers and sisters. Should, should they be scornful and rude, teach them with silence and benevolence. They are unacquainted with good manners, so they need your example. So let's calm our minds, our thoughts, so you can enjoy this, the, the speech that Anisio is going to deliver to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Flavia. Thank you very much. So, hopefully, you guys are doing great. So, we're going to have a little bit of heat coming our way, apparently, right? So, I just checked the weather. So, it's not going to be as bad as it was a couple of weeks ago, but I think it's going to be enough to put us above the average. We're going to talk about today about it's actually the part of the gospel that came for us today is chapter 28 of the gospel according to Spiritism, where there's a lot of prayers. It's actually where Kardec kind of teaches to do to give us some examples of prayers, right? And we talk a lot about that in our study groups because prayers for us are really they're nothing to do well. People, when we think about prayers, we think about religion. I think most people, when we say prayer, or we associate with a religious thing, right? And from our perspective, it's nothing. It doesn't need to be anything to do with religion. Actually, prayers, in theory, are much more important because they are a way for us to change our mindset, for us to change our energy, change our vibration. If you say a prayer without feeling the words, then it doesn't work, right? That's why we don't do, most of the time we practice with our groups when people that start practicing with us and doing more working within ourselves. Even the people that does the prayer here, you see, they're all different. Because what we try to do is to develop a connection with the words I'm saying to me, that makes sense to me, right? It doesn't mean if it's beautiful or not, that's secondary, right? As long as you say the word, because then the prayer, when we say those words and we think about them, they change our vibratory level. They change the way we're thinking, right? And that's not religious at all. That's, to us, from our perspective, that's how we connect with the divine. But even if you don't believe in anything, even if you don't believe in God or anything, that already has a benefit to you because it changed your vibratory level. It changed your emotional condition. And this is proven because, it's the placebo effect that the scientists talk about today. And for us, this is actually very important because our mind is a crucial element of our lives. And by the way, if you think about our lives are in our mind, right? Doesn't matter what's happening outside of us. If you believe it's bad, it's bad. Right? And if you believe whatever happening to you is good, you're fine, right? Because the life really happened in our minds, not outside. It's like that's why the same event, the same thing can mean two completely different things for two different people. Two different, one person can see as a positive, another one can see as a negative, right? So, and that's why, so there's a lot of teachings there. And one of them is resilience. But before we get to resilience, that's exactly the core of Spiritism, the core of the teachings. It's centered in giving us, transitioning the responsibility for our lives to us. in a sense that we understand that life doesn't end with the body, and it didn't start with the body. So which means we are beings that have been around for a long time. We don't know how long. People ask, well, how long have been around? We don't know. Actually, nobody knows. What we know now from science is that Earth, like about 1 billion years ago, only had bacteria, right? So there's only very simple biological beings were available about 1 billion years ago. And then evolution came through, right? And eventually, here we are, like this amazing creatures with this complex brains and amazing, right? So in a way, that's what I like to make this. This is funny, right? In our families, if you go biological family, and if you go seeing who was your grandpa, if you keep going, eventually you're going to find a bacteria, like 1 billion years ago, right? Isn't it amazing? So it took about 1 billion years to form from a bacteria. We don't know exactly, those numbers are just but guesses, right? From a bacteria to us. So 1 billion years is a long time. It's a very long time, right? So we don't know yet, because science is not yet into the spiritual thing. We don't know the path of evolution of the spirit. We know there is. We believe that spirits also have, the spiritual part of us, also has an evolutionary path. But we don't have help from science yet. What we know is only little. We know that our evolution that matters to us is just a few lives, is like 4 or 5 lives. Those are the ones that are affecting us the most today. If you go back way in the past, who knows? No one will go. I mean, if you go back, just a few lives is going to be enough to get what we are going through right now, right? So our lives that matter the most are the latest one. So this is what connects. But this information, this piece of information, puts us in the center of what's the most important value for me right now, because I'm working on myself, and I'm a being that has been around for a long time, and I'll continue to be who I am in the future. So every single one of us is a creature that is divine in essence, because we are not going to end. So this is an incredibly powerful knowledge to have at this point in time. And the body becomes just a circumstance, right? And I know for the vast majority of us in our culture nowadays, the body is who we are, right? That's why we have a lot of. Still, we have developed a lot of care for our bodies. Thanks God, right? We are now much more conscious about what we eat and being mindful about our health and things like that, right? And this is great. This is a great step forward. I think we're much more careful with ourselves than we used to be in the past. But now, what's coming, and that's why we're bringing through Spiritism, this is not just Spiritism, most spiritual religions or teachings come like that as well, is now, yes, you have to be careful with your body, but then the real thing that's going to go with you is your mind, right? Because that's the part of you that's not going to go away ever, right? So also taking care of the mind is just absolutely fundamental. Right? So we are nurturing now minds. And if you start that journey, paying attention what you have in your mind, I don't know about you, but it's a very self-discovering journey, because you notice that your mind is a little bit, has a life of its own, right? It's like even when you, when you start to paying attention, most people don't even pay attention sometimes to what's going on in their minds. It's like that we take it for granted. But if you start paying attention, you see it's we have a very complex world within ourselves. And every single one of us is a kind of unique place. And when you start paying attention, you discover things, you start seeing thoughts that some you don't even like. You notice that there are things that manifest certain ways. And even when you want to change them, let's say you find something you don't like. You find something that, I remember I have a case in my family. This is very typical. I don't know if you might know someone, or you might be in that. I have a brother that has a problem with heights, right? He has a problem with heights. I mean, he used to, I remember once he didn't realize he was crossing a bridge, a walking bridge in São Paulo, close to the tram, whoever is from São Paulo, the 23 de Maio, right? And he didn't realize. He was just walking like auto mode, right? And then he was like halfway into the bridge, And he realized he was in a bridge over the Vista de Mayo, and he locked. He almost had to be carried out. People had to carry him out of the bridge because he had a panic of heights, right? And then we look into his story. There's no story that he never felt, as far as we know. We don't have any experience this life that connected to any sort of fear that would connect this sort of experience to him. Never anything bad. And so he started going to a psychologist and everything. Now he's much better. But for us, the only way to explain this kind of phobia, this kind of panic, by the way, it's natural to him. He didn't control. He was trying to control, right? But he couldn't. It was just bigger than him. So for us, those are memories or connection to events that happened in the past, right? And they're there, just present. And there's nothing you can do because they overwhelm you. Right? Those are emotions that for us, they connect with the past we had. And we all have those. That's the problem. Here's the trick part. We all have those. It changes what it is. We have a lot of conditioning that comes to us that don't have a place sometimes in the way we were raised and the way our families are, right? There's a lot of people, especially when you have kids your age actually, sometimes before 7, there's a lot of funny stories about kids that say things that make no sense, right? There's a famous Spiritist speaker that she tells the story about her 4 or 5 year old son, sitting on a table, right? They're about to have a meal, right? And she's just, informally, just handing food to the kids and everything. And then the 3 or 4 year old kid look at her and said, "This table is not properly set. The cutlery is not properly laid out. The napkins, this is a mess." And then she looked at, "What? Where are you? Where did you get that? Where did you get that? How are you complaining about the way the table is dressed?" I mean, this is clearly an experience of the past, right? So this is where, and there's a famous case in America. If you want, there's the case of if you Google, there's I think it's a 60 Minutes or ABC, one of those major national shows about a kid that before the age of 7, he would remember all the details of a bomber from the Second World War. He even remembered all the details of the specific, intricate details, mechanicals of that airplane that has not been built since the World War II. So that's like 1940s or 50s, right? And he knew details about the operation in even a battle where apparently, right? And this is super common. If you see around your family, if it's not happening in your family, you see that it happens a lot, but people don't make a big deal out of it. You know why? And even if you talk to a psychologist, they don't make a big deal because after the age of 7, it starts to go away. Even if the kid has all those memories, very intense, after the age of 7, they start whining. For most people, they start going away, and then when they become teenagers, most of the time is all gone. And we study that in our, because that's the age of 7 when your body, the systems are all formed, all the biology is formed, everything kind of, all the parts of the brain are in place. So then the memories usually fade, right? And the reason is because that's what we need. We need a new experience. The vast majority of us, if you go back in history, you see, if you just go back in history and just study what people did 100 years ago, you see that we were not nicer to each other. Things we accepted 100 years ago, we don't even think, right? So we have a lot of pain and a lot of suffering in our past lives because, that was the norm of society, right? But if you were a woman, 100 to 200 years ago, things were not easier, right? In terms of freedom, right? In terms of economic circumstances. So if you go back in history, you see that for the vast majority of situations, things were more complicated. So the opportunity of not remembering and starting over and starting fresh is valuable. That's what's going on with our kids right now.
So how do you explain when between family members, they don't like each other for some reason?
We do that. This is one of the most difficult parts when we study. We do a study on Spiritism on Tuesdays. And this is one of the most difficult parts to study, because family is very important, right? Family is very important because what happens? Those are the group of people you're going to come for this life, right? You have a connection with those parents, brothers and sisters, even your uncles. I mean, it's a very crucial choice, right? And for us, and this is, my kids are, well, they are in, I'm a Spiritist, my wife is a Spiritist too, right? So we know that the choice of parents is not random. So which means, for us, the argument of, I didn't choose to be here, I don't want to do this and that, doesn't work with us. You begged to be here. You chose to be in this life. You asked for this. Because we all think that the choice of the family is very intricate with your goal in life, with your goal, what you want to do in this life. So you picked the family that you needed, not the one necessarily you wanted. And in many circumstances, there's many circumstances where humans, where our relationships of the past are really broken, really, really broken. Because who knows, we emphasize in disputes, we emphasize in controlling, who knows, the reasons can be infinite. And one of the ways to mend that, one of the ways to learn to be with each other, is to come in the same family. So in many circumstances, you have people with very antagonistic, not good reasons sometimes. Sometimes people are very antagonistic, right? And there's not really a good reason because, never, had anything to justify that, right? Nothing really happening. Nothing was done to each other, right? There's a tremendous, we have the stories that are better taught through the mediums because usually we don't recommend digging that thing out. We don't recommend. If you have somebody in your family, for instance, that you have a difficult time, just deal with it with love. Just be aware that this is a relationship you have to mend. You don't necessarily need to go dig in the past, go talk to mediums or do therapy of the past lives. We don't recommend those things because knowing might not make it easier. Knowing might not make it easier. Might make it harder. Might make it harder. If you know that that person did something to you in the past, might not make it easier to deal with that person. Might make it harder, right? But we have some, in the movement, we have some cases or famous mediums like Divaldo Franco. Some of you might have heard about him. Divaldo Franco is a very well-known speaker in Brazil. And because his life has been like for 70 or 80 years dedicated to this movement, we have a lot of information about him. And he is very open about his life. And he has the story. He tells the story of his sister. He had a sister that was, the relationship with his dad was incredibly bad. They couldn't talk to each other. And there was nothing in this life that would justify that. I mean, apparently the father never did anything harmful to her, unusual, right? And she had a tremendous antipathy. I mean, she couldn't tolerate the father, which is unusual as well. I mean, for nothing, unless they do something, right? If your father is aggressive to you or, But apparently there was nothing. And they had this tremendously difficult relationship for their whole life. And then Divaldo actually, I'm not going to tell because we're going to have to look at it, but Divaldo, because of mediumship, towards the end, he was able to figure out what was the past life. And he had to do with past life. The past life was super complicated, was super, super difficult. And all the antipathy, all all that hate between them was all from what happened before, right? And the moment of the passing is very beautiful because when he dies, Divaldo, because he was aware of that, he told her, mend, just mend. Oh, there. He never did, in this life, he never did anything to you. Yes, he might have done horrible things to you in past life, but in this one, he didn't. It's the time to mend, right? It's the time to let go, right? And there's a beautiful passage when he tells the story, when the dad is about to pass, she went to talk to him. She went and they kind of figure out. And for both of them, it was a very healing moment. So that's what we're here for. We're here to heal. We're here to learn to deal with difficult people, right? This is what we're here for. And just that information, just this piece of information is life-saving, right?
So that being said, like feelings or phobias, even though after it turns 8, 9, teenager, it goes with you throughout your life, or
If it
Sure.
goes through, it's
Yeah.
something you have to treat. Okay, this is one of the cases where if you have a phobia that's making your life more difficult, right? That's different. So that is a situation where we open up. Okay, this is you have to go to a psychologist. There's a lot of treatments. Usually has to do with something in this life. It usually has to do with experience on this life. If it doesn't, that's one of the cases where we suggest regression, because just to deal with a phobia, right? Because if that's complicated, like for instance, I'll give you the example of the height. That can be paralyzing to your life, can complicate your life depending on what you do. In those cases, it's recommended that you seek help and you really consider the therapy. That's the only case we recommend the therapy of a regression therapy or something like that, because there's a problem you're trying to solve. Never do regression for curiosity. We really don't recommend out of curiosity. Let me see what it was. Maybe everybody likes to be a king or a queen in the past, and so there's not many of those compared to the amount of people, right? So don't go for that, unless you have a phobia or something that's really complicating, is a problem for you right now, and it's locking your life. Then it's okay to. Then we recommend you might seek that kind of help. Right, but not for. We really don't recommend for any sort of curiosity, because we already have enough on our plate. We already have enough. I'm pretty sure if you think about all the challenges they're going through this life, we have a lot on our plate. I don't know about you. I have a lot on my plate right now of things I have to take care of in this life, right? With the problems, with the situations and things we have to improve. We have a lot on our plates, right? Many people complain about the teaching of reincarnation in the sense that why we don't remember. Well, if we all lived past lives, we should all remember. And the reason we don't is because God loves us, because we cannot handle. We cannot handle. Think about even ourselves. How many times we are still dealing with the traumas of our infancy, when we were kids. Things that happened for us this life when we were like kids, or some pain, some experiences we had with people that hurt us, and we sometimes take our whole life, this life, right, healing and going through that process, right? It's so hard sometimes emotionally, because here's the thing: the emotional battle is much more important than the material one. And for us right now, the material is more important, right? Is to have enough resources to our family, is to have enough resources to have a good life. This is our main concern right now, right? But this has a time, because as long as the body goes away. The battle for peace of mind, for having a balanced mind, for having an emotional balanced dealing with all the situations we deal, this is a way more important endeavor, if you think about, because if you're never going to die, it's forever. And if we achieve the balance, if we achieve this condition where we are in balance, nobody can throw us off, right? If you're capable, like for instance, if people that are impatient throw you off, if you cannot tolerate people that are impatient, right? If that annoys you, right? If a person that has lack of patience triggers you, right? Those people are going to be always around you, right? And that always triggers you. And it's not that they're going to, I mean, there's a natural distribution of those people around you. And they're going to always trigger your emotion. And they're going to make you suffer, right? Because it's difficult for you to deal with this kind of people, right? So what is the way to go? The problem is you're not going to be able to change those people. You're not going to go heal everybody else that has lack of patience, because you cannot heal anybody else. You cannot go and change somebody else. Who you can change? Yourself. And you can learn to deal with those individuals in a more balanced way. That's why the core of Christianity is the main teaching of Jesus is love thyself, love God above all things, but love your neighbor as yourself. Right? This is the goal, because then you can handle. Because if you love, even think about how much you treat your kids different than you treat other people, because you love your kids, right? So much harder for a kid to hurt a parent than another person. Kids have to do a lot to hurt their parents, right? because sometimes we have more tolerance to them because of our love, right? Sometimes they manage because kids also find the soft spot on us, right? Eventually they find the soft spot as well on us, right? But our tolerance is much higher with our kids, right? But again, we will need to learn to emotionally deal with those individuals. And that is the main teaching of this life, right?
Can I just ask something? If you said, for example, when we reincarnate, we forgot about things, right?
Most of us, yeah.
Most of us, but
Yeah.
we still feel things when you have that type of
Oh yeah, emotional. Why do you ask?
emotional
yes.
feeling still stays.
Yeah. So when we study this, you might like the study because we go deeper into this kind of discussions, right? In a circle and
Tuesdays, I guess.
7:30. Yeah. So what we do is like situations like that. For instance, emotionally, this is the best Anisio you have ever seen. Ever. Emotionally, because as a spirit, we don't regress. We don't believe a spirit regresses. We believe we progress, or we become stationary. We can get stuck, but we don't regress. Right? We don't get worse. That's what we believe, right? So, but then people say, well, how come we don't get worse if some person no, it's just that we didn't go through tests. How you know you are good at something when people put you to test, right? Because you may think you're a patient. Oh, I'm a patient. I have patience. I don't have problem with patience, right? I'm a very patient person. Yeah, but is there the right people testing you? You're going to really be tested when those that are not patient come to your life. And you're exposed to those experiences, right? So that's what you're gonna know, being tested, being exposed to a situation where your patience is really tested doesn't happen all the time. So in many situations we think we are. Used to be a student. He was really nice in our groups. They moved to a different town now. He's a very strong man actually. He was a kind of Arnold Schwarzenegger style, and he was very sweet, very sweet. Very difficult to see him mad for anything. Very calm, very very sweet and calm person, right? And it was very contrasting to his size. And one day we never saw him get mad with anything. And then one day the state of California made a mistake with his taxes. The state of California, some paperwork, some red tape. They went there. They charged him more taxes than they should have paid. He got mad. And then I saw him for the first time mad with what's going on? And that's the test. You understand? For us, it's hard to know where you really are until you're tested. That's why the experiences we're going to go through in life will lead us into the experiences we have to go through. So be careful when you say, I'm patient or I'm balanced. No, I'll never do this, not that. Well, okay, maybe true, maybe not, because it depends. Then comes the other very important teaching of Christianity. Do not judge. That's why Jesus has that major teaching when the woman was brought to him. And everybody wants to stone the woman because she was cheating, right? So that was the punishment. Throw a stone on him, And he starts saying, okay. And then he starts writing on the sand. And he wrote in the sand all the vanity, jealousy. He started all the little imperfections we all have. If you have none of those, throw the stone. If you have never been jealous, if you have never been impatient, if you have never been, everybody left. Because everybody had something. On Earth, that's what we do. On Earth, this is not a planet of angels. See what we do to ourselves. This is a planet of spirits that are learning the basics of living together, right? He was left alone, and he said, I will not condemn you, right? Go and not do it again. Right? It's amazing that if you think the profoundness of teachings of Jesus, when you put the life beyond the scope of one single body, then the gospel shines. Then the gospel becomes the full power of the gospel unleashes. right? And that's why the major work we're going through right now is the work in ourselves, right? By the way, we tangented completely from the topic we were doing today, and I think this was supposed to happen. I think that was what we were supposed to talk about today. But we passed our time. So let's say thank you very much for everybody if you're watching this, and have a good Sunday.